I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of my condo on the 11th floor, sipping my espresso, watching the early morning Boston traffic start to crawl. My routine is sacred. 6:30 a.m. coffee, 7 a.m. threat briefing review, 8 a.m. commute. This morning, the routine shattered when I looked down at parking space C14, the one I'd paid an extra 50K for when I bought this place. It was empty. The beautiful sandstone 2024 Ford Bronco Sport I'd bought myself as a reward for finally making senior consultant, the one I made the final payment on last month, was gone. My first thought was simple panic, a mechanical failure of logic. Did I park it on the street? No, never. The condo security is why I pay the insane HOA fees. I grabbed my phone and called the building manager, trying to sound calm as I reported the missing vehicle. This is Serafina Davies in 1104. My car is gone from C14. Was there an unauthorized tow? The manager was apologetic, but firm. No tows, Miss Davies. The only vehicle that left that bay this morning was signed out by a Mr. Edward Davies at 5:15 a.m. using the spare key you left on file with us for emergencies. My blood ran cold, the espresso suddenly tasting like acid. I hung up without a word and immediately called my mother, Vivian. She picked up on the second ring, her voice sickeningly cheerful. "Morning, Sarah, darling. I was just about to call you. Did you sleep well?" The forced lightness in her voice, that particular tone that always meant trouble, was like a red flag to my gut. "Mom, where is my car? Did Dad take it?" I asked, my voice dangerously even. "Oh, honey, relax. We lent it to Owen," she chirped, the word lent hitting my ear like a calculated blow. "He has that huge meeting in New York, the one for his new business venture, remember? He needs reliable transportation, and you know how unreliable the commuter rail is." My grip tightened on the phone until my fingers were numb. "You what?" "Owen just got his license back, Mom, and you know he can't hold a job for more than 3 months. You didn't ask me. You and Dad just stole my vehicle to enable him." Her tone instantly shifted from cheerful to martyred. "Stolen? Don't be dramatic, Sarah. It's family. Family helps family. You're so successful, you can just take an Uber for a few days. Owen needs this chance. You're the capable one. You always figure things out." The capable one. That phrase, the dagger they'd been twisting for 30 years, resurfaced with stinging clarity. I was 19, trying to scrape together cash for my first cybersecurity certification course. $1,500. "We just can't spare it, honey," Dad had sighed, shaking his head sadly. 2 weeks later, Owen had totaled his third car in 3 years. Dad bought him a newer, far safer sedan, $20,000, because he needed to feel safe driving. I was the responsible one. I understood. I always understood. I took 3 deep, shaky breaths, disconnected the call, and walked straight to my home office. My hands no longer trembled. They moved with sharp, decisive purpose. I pulled up my banking app, confirming the final payment, the title, the insurance policy, all in my name. I opened my cloud drive and created a new folder labeled Davies/Owen Seft. Then I checked my phone. The texts were already flooding in. From Vivian, "Don't you dare ruin this for your brother. I won't forgive you." From Edward, "It's just a Bronco, Sarah. We kept the spare key for emergencies. This is an emergency." From cousin Penelope, "Heard you're being selfish. You wouldn't throw family under the bus, would you?" I screenshotted every single message, meticulously documenting the admissions of guilt and the coordinated pressure campaign. I uploaded them all to the cloud folder. They assumed I would fold, that the fear of family conflict would stop me, just like it always had. They assumed wrong. I picked up the phone and dialed 911. "I need to report the theft of my vehicle," I told the dispatcher, my voice like ice. "I know the perpetrators. They are my parents, Edward Davies and Vivian Davies, and my brother, Owen Davies. I have written confessions." I hung up,
walked to my espresso machine, and poured myself a second cup. The war had officially started, and I was holding the evidence. Officer Chen, a middle-aged woman with a tired, kind expression, arrived 40 minutes later. She looked skeptical, like she'd been called out for a domestic dispute, not a felony. I had my documents laid out on the kitchen island. Title of ownership, 5 years of payment receipts, and the printouts of the text messages. Miss Davies, you're reporting grand theft auto against your mother, father, and brother? She asked, her pen hovering over her notebook. Yes, officer. They accessed my condo with a spare emergency key, drove my fully paid off 2024 Ford Bronco Sport out of the designated parking spot, and admitted in writing they took it without permission to aid my brother Owen in a non-emergency situation.
I slid the texts across the counter. Vivian's text, "We lent it to Owen," was highlighted. Chen's professional demeanor cracked, just slightly, revealing genuine disbelief. They admit it's gone and they facilitated it? I leaned against the counter. They didn't just borrow it. They stole a titled asset. They committed conspiracy to enable my brother, who is currently on probation for reckless driving, to drive across state lines. The law calls that theft. Chen scribbled furiously. I told her about the decade of sacrifices, the pattern of enabling Owen and my expense. The moment the phrase, "the capable one," became a weapon against me. I didn't ask for pity. I provided context. As she was leaving, she paused. I have to ask, Miss Davies. Most people stop when they realize the consequences for their parents. I met her eyes. My family stopped when they realized the consequences for me didn't matter to them. I'm stopping the pattern. Please issue the bolo immediately. After Chen left, the rest of my morning went into professional damage control. I called my office. My boss, a perpetually stressed but fair man, was aghast. Your car was stolen by your family? Sarah, take the day. We can reschedule the client security audit. Your well-being comes first. The support was unexpected and incredibly calming. My friend Marcus, a junior consultant, texted me immediately after I explained what happened in a quick internal chat. On my way. Don't you dare Uber. I grabbed my purse and waited for him downstairs. When Marcus pulled up in his ancient but reliable sedan, I slid into the passenger seat, the full reality of my dependence hitting me. First time they've ever done something this severe? Marcus asked gently. I shook my head, staring straight ahead. First time I haven't let them. I felt a clarity I hadn't known existed. This wasn't just about a car. It was about defining the final boundary. They wanted me to be their scapegoat. I was choosing to be their accountability. I'm pressing charges against all three, I stated, the words sounding solid and real in the air between us. Marcus simply nodded. Good. You need Layla's number? She eats family trauma for breakfast. By the time we reached the office, Officer Chen had done her job. The bolo, be on the lookout, was nationwide. My Bronco, my property, was officially listed as stolen. Part 1 of the plan was complete. The retribution was just beginning. I was deep into modeling a critical network vulnerability when the office intrusion occurred. It was 11:45 a.m., and the professional calm of the cybersecurity firm was violently interrupted. Marcus appeared at my desk, his face tight and pale. Sarah, you need to know. Your mother is downstairs, in the lobby. My stomach lurched, a cold, heavy feeling settling in. Vivian had always known how to weaponize public embarrassment. She's making a scene, Marcus whispered, glancing around the quiet, open-plan office. Security called up. She's demanding to see you, shouting about betrayal and family destroyers. Every instinct screamed to hide, to apologize, to contain the escalating damage. The old Sarah would have been halfway down the stairwell, ready to concede anything, just to silence the chaos. But the new Sarah, the one who had just called the police on her own parents, felt a surge of cold fury instead. I closed my laptop, walked past Marcus without a word, and headed for the elevator.
The descent felt like marching toward an execution, but I reminded myself, I am the one holding the axe now. As the doors slid open onto the marble and glass lobby, the sound of Vivian's voice hit me. She was standing dead center, performing for the security guard, the receptionist, and the dozen or so corporate types who were frozen mid-lunch break. How dare she, calling the police on her own flesh and blood over a misunderstanding? She's throwing her brother in jail, she wailed, dabbing her dry eyes with a tissue. My colleagues, including Sarah from accounting and 2 analysts I mentored, were watching the whole appalling display. This was the exact scene she wanted. The successful daughter exposed as the cruel monster destroying her kind, loving family. I walked toward her, my heels echoing sharply on the polished floor, every step a declaration of war. Vivian's dramatic performance faltered when she saw the look on my face. She expected tears, pleading, or compliance. She got neither. "Vivian," I said, my voice low and utterly devoid of emotion, "this is my place of employment. You are trespassing." I didn't look at her. I looked directly at Robert, the security guard, a gentleman who usually just checked badges.
Robert, this woman is unauthorized to be here and is creating a disturbance. Please escort her out and ensure she is permanently barred from the premises. Vivian gasped, her mouth falling open in genuine shock. "You can't be serious. I'm your mother," she shrieked, dropping the performance entirely. "I am a senior consultant here, and you are threatening my professional standing and the security of this building," I replied, turning away immediately and addressing the receptionist, Maria. "Maria, please document that Vivian Davies is not authorized to visit me and must be removed if she attempts entry again." As I walked back to the elevators, Vivian's voice followed me, thick with genuine rage and disbelief. "You will regret this. We raised you better than this." I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button. My hands were shaking violently now, but the public confrontation was over. Back at my desk, I expected judgment, whispers, and career damage. Instead, the response was radically different. Within minutes, a software engineer named Sam, who I barely knew, approached my desk. "Hey, Sarah," he kept his voice quiet. "My sister stole $5,000 from my savings when I was in college. I had to threaten legal action just to get her to stop. Sometimes you have to burn the bridge to save the coast." His confession was followed by others throughout the afternoon. Marcus brought me a coffee and said he'd had IT block my mother's number from the work phone system. Maria from the front desk sent me an internal chat. "You handled that like a boss, seriously." The collective support was a solid shield against the chaos. At 3:30 p.m., the big boss, my senior partner Richard, called me into his soundproofed glass office. I braced myself for the official reprimand. "I heard there was a situation in the lobby, Serafina," he said, leaning back. "Yes, Richard. My mother trespassed and was removed by security." He studied me, his expression neutral. "You apologized for the disruption?" I hesitated. "Yes, I'm sorry it affected the office." Richard smiled slightly. "Don't apologize for having boundaries, Sarah. You had a known disruptor threatening your work environment, and you handled it professionally and decisively. That shows backbone. We need people with backbone here." The relief was immediate and overwhelming. "Take whatever time you need for the legal issues," he concluded. "Your work speaks for itself." An hour later, my personal cell rang. It was Edward, my father, his number appearing like a plague. I walked into a small server room and closed the door. "You've completely lost your mind, tearing this family apart over a car." "You stole my property, Dad," I stated, completely detached. "We borrowed it for your brother. You're going to put Owen in prison?" "Owen put himself in prison when he drove a stolen vehicle while on probation. That's his choice, not mine. You and Mom enabled the crime." His voice warped with pure fury. "After everything we've done for you, name one time you supported me as an adult."
Silence. I waited, allowing the weight of that question to crush his narrative. "The spare key," he finally spat. "We kept it for emergencies. And you used it to commit a felony. Anything else?" He sputtered, resorting to the ultimate threat. "I'll tell everyone. The whole family will know what a cold, vindictive bitch you are." "Go ahead," I said calmly. "Tell them I reported a felony. Tell them I refuse to be a victim anymore." I hung up before he could respond. My friend Layla, the litigator, met me that evening. "I have a legal attorney for you," she announced, handing me a glass of wine. "Gabriella Soto. She is a former ADA. She will eat their narrative alive." I was reviewing the costs, impound fees, Uber charges, the missed client time. Just as Layla was talking me through the process, Officer Chen called. "Miss Davies, I have an update. Your brother, Owen, was pulled over in New York State doing 90 in a 65 zone. The vehicle was flagged as stolen. He's in custody." My wine glass paused halfway to my lips. "The vehicle is impounded?" "Yes, and his license was suspended immediately for excessive speeding while on probation. Your parents, Edward and Vivian, are being charged with conspiracy and theft based on your evidence package." I hung up and sat back, the exhaustion finally hitting me. It wasn't about the car anymore. It was about the definitive end of the abuse. I opened my legal pad and began to list every financial cost, every violation, every piece of evidence. They had underestimated me. They wanted a guilt trip. They were getting documentation.
The call from the prosecutor's office came the next morning at 8 a.m. I was already at my kitchen island meticulously reviewing the $1,150 in impound fees and towing costs I'd incurred. "Miss Davies, this is Assistant District Attorney Reynolds." His voice was professionally weary. "I won't mince words. I've been prosecuting for 12 years, and this is the first time I've ever had a victim pursue full criminal charges against both parents and a sibling." He paused, clearly fishing for me to back down. "Do you understand the weight of what you're asking? Felony charges for vehicle theft and conspiracy?" I set down my pen, meeting the invisible scrutiny of the receiver. "Yes, Mr. Reynolds. They stole a titled asset from my designated parking spot using a key I entrusted to them for a legitimate emergency. They facilitated a probation violator in driving a stolen vehicle across state lines. Their intent was to permanently deprive me of that property, evidenced by their refusal to even ask permission. Do your job, Mr. Reynolds." The slight edge of professional skepticism in his voice sharpened into genuine intrigue. "I'd like you to come in today. Bring the file." My phone immediately blew up. Grandmother Eleanor, the true matriarch who rarely interfered, but whose disappointment carried the weight of scripture, called 4 times. I let them all go to voicemail, capturing them as digital evidence of the pressure campaign. Eleanor's voicemail played automatically. "Serafina Elizabeth Davies, I am deeply disappointed in this vendetta. Your parents made a mistake, but family forgives. This is beneath you." Cousin Penelope's Facebook post popped up next. "Some people value money over loyalty, praying for families torn apart by cruelty." I screenshotted every piece, organizing them meticulously in my folder, Family Pressure Campaign, 25 items. I was going to the ADA's office, ready. 2 hours later, I was sitting across from Reynolds, pushing my file across his desk. He flipped through the stack of documents, the receipts, the title, the call logs, the text messages where Vivian explicitly stated they had lent the car. Then he reached Owen's arrest report: excessive speed, stolen vehicle flag, probation violation. "The evidence is comprehensive," Reynolds finally admitted, rubbing his chin. "Your parents' text messages are essentially a written confession of intent and conspiracy. Your brother incriminated himself on a jail recording we obtained, arguing he needed the car and I had plenty of money." I nodded, remembering the raw entitlement in Owen's voice from the recording.
He didn't need a car, Mr. Reynolds. He needed a consequence. We can take all three, but I have to be absolutely sure. Are you certain you want to proceed to trial? I am certain. Then we will proceed to negotiation. I'll be in touch. I paid the impound fees and towing costs that afternoon, standing on the sticky floor of the Boston impound lot. When I finally located my sandstone Bronco, my stomach turned over. It wasn't just messy, it was violated. The interior, which I'd kept pristine, smelled overwhelmingly of stale tobacco smoke and cheap energy drinks. There were sticky remnants of fast food wrappers everywhere, and a fresh cigarette burn marred the passenger seat upholstery. The odometer showed 350 extra miles in the single day he'd had it. The oil change light glowed amber. I pulled out my phone and began photographing everything. The damage, the filth, the proof of disrespect. This was not just a borrowed car. This was an asset that had been recklessly abused and returned damaged. While I was documenting the back seat, my phone rang. It was the jail. I answered on silent recording. Sarah, you have to fix this. I needed that car. You know I needed it. I had that meeting. It was real. Okay, fine. I got fired 3 months ago. But this was my chance. You're going to regret this when I get out. I let him rage, soaking up the sound of his impotent fury. When he finally paused for breath, I spoke, my voice devoid of emotion. Owen, you stole my car, a vehicle I paid for, on probation, and drove it like a maniac. Mom and Dad helped you do it. These are your consequences. They are not mine. I hung up and immediately called Gabriela Soto, my new attorney. We need to add a condition for restitution and a public apology.
Done, she said, her voice sharp and eager. They want a plea deal, Sarah. What are your conditions? I didn't hesitate. I had been writing them for 48 hours. 3 pages of demands. Full restitution for all damages and fees. 3 years of probation, and a permanent, legally binding no-contact order with a significant penalty for violation. But most importantly, I required Owen to read a prepared, unedited statement in open court, admitting to theft, not just unauthorized use. The court date arrived 2 cold weeks later. I walked into the courthouse with Gabriela Soto by my side. She was a commanding presence, and her mere proximity was a shield. The lobby was filled with the Davies clan, Vivian, Edward, Owen, and a usual entourage, Eleanor, Aunt Janice, Cousin Penelope. They had formed a silent, angry cordon, staring at me with expressions ranging from Eleanor's crushing disappointment to Vivian's undisguised malice. I walked past them without making eye contact. Inside courtroom 2A, I sat alone with Gabriela. The feeling wasn't lonely. It was liberating. The extended family filled the benches on the opposite side, a unified front of people who had never once asked for my side of the story. Judge Harrison, a sharp-faced, no-nonsense man, entered precisely at 9 a.m. Case 2024 CR 6110, the Commonwealth versus Owen, Vivian, and Edward Davies. Reynolds summarized the plea deal. All 3 would plead to lesser charges to avoid trial, but only if they met the victim's 3 conditions. These terms seem appropriate, Judge Harrison said, reading my demands. Mr. Owen Davies, please stand. Owen rose slowly, looking pale and pathetic. He pulled out the required statement. Read it, Mr. Davies, clearly. His voice was barely a whisper. I, Owen Davies, admit that I stole my sister's 2024 Ford Bronco Sport. I took it without her knowledge or permission, and I knew my action constituted theft. The word theft was the linchpin. Not borrowing, not using, theft. The sound of Vivian's sharp, stifled sob echoed through the silent courtroom. She was crying for the loss of their carefully constructed narrative. Edward and Vivian approached the bench next. Judge Harrison looked at them, his gaze cold.
As co-conspirators in this theft, how do you plead? No contest, Edward muttered, his face brick red. No contest, Vivian whispered, her control finally shattering. Restitution of $1,150 is ordered immediately, plus 1 year of probation and a no-contact order, the judge stated. He then removed his glasses and addressed my parents directly. Let me be clear. Parents who violate the trust of their child to commit a felony for another child show a profound failure of character. This court views your actions as worse than those of a common criminal. Case closed. I sat still, breathing lightly. The battle was over. The family scattered, defeated, and ashamed, unable to meet my eyes as they left the courtroom. I walked out into the cold Boston air, breathing the fresh, clear scent of victory and freedom. 3 days after the court date, a certified check arrived via courier. It was for the court-ordered restitution of $1,150. The memo line, scrawled in Vivian's signature aggressive handwriting, simply read, "For Sarah." No apology, no acknowledgement of the crime, just my name, as if settling a debt with a stranger. I deposited the money electronically, cataloged the envelope, and filed it with the rest of the evidence. That evening, Layla and Marcus came over, bringing takeout and a high-end bottle of Cabernet. We made this a ritual, a monthly dinner with the people who had stood by me when my blood relations tried to crush me. "How do you feel?" Layla asked, pouring a generous glass for me. Underneath the satisfaction, I feel sad, I admitted, looking at my keys hanging on the new secure hook by the door. Is that weird? Like mourning the relationship that never existed? Not weird at all, Marcus assured me. They forced you to acknowledge the death of a lie. You're grieving the ideal, not the reality. We clinked glasses, sharing stories about how family can often be the most dangerous system to navigate. That realization that my story was not unique, but a pattern of abuse, was more comforting than any hollow family reunion could ever be.
8 months passed, and with every month, the invisible knot that used to tighten in my stomach every time my phone rang began to loosen. I stopped checking my rearview mirror for cars following me. The fear of confrontation dissolved into calm certainty. I was untouchable. I was the one who enforced the consequences. I stood at my kitchen window one Sunday morning, same spot, same ceramic mug, but when I looked down at parking spot C14, my sandstone Bronco sat exactly where I had parked it. The heavy, commercial-grade steering wheel lock I'd bought was gleaming in the sun, a symbol of protection that had become unnecessary, but remained for ritual. The GPS tracker I had installed under the dash was just a backup. The peace of mind was now the primary security system. My phone buzzed. It was Eleanor. I took a deep breath and answered on the third ring. "Florence," she said, her voice brittle and hesitant, the careful tone of someone testing ice that might crack. "Your mother misses you terribly. She says she wishes you would just call." I let the silence stretch, using the strategic pause she herself had taught me years ago during a lesson on negotiation. "They are still under a legal no-contact order, Grandma, and on probation," I said, my voice kind but firm. "When they are ready to apologize for the crime itself, not just the consequences it brought them, they have my number." Eleanor sighed heavily. I understand." And for the first time, I actually believed she did. The courtroom scene, Owen reading the word theft, the judge's condemnation of Edward and Vivian, had stripped away the last layer of deniability. They all knew the truth now. 2 months later, the company promoted me to senior associate. I walked into the main conference room for the announcement, and my colleagues stood and applauded. Marcus squeezed my arm under the table. The family drama that could have crippled my career had instead cemented my reputation as someone with unwavering ethical boundaries and steely resolve. Younger analysts started seeking me out, asking questions not about code, but about how to handle difficult situations and assert authority. My story had become an unexpected lesson in professional backbone. Exactly 1 year after the court date,
A plain envelope arrived. The handwriting on the address was shaky, barely legible, but familiar. Owens. I opened it at the mailbox. There were no demands, no excuses, and no request for forgiveness. Just 3 paragraphs typed out, admitting he was in a sober living program, attending mandatory counseling, and finally working through his entitlement issues. He took complete responsibility without asking for anything from me. I folded the letter, walked upstairs, and filed it in my desk drawer. Progress noted. No response necessary. My choice to respond, or not, was now entirely my own. Later that night, I sat down with my journal. I wrote about the patterns I had finally broken, the generational curse of enabling that had ended with me. I wrote about the career I had built despite them, not because of them. My success was solely mine. Before bed, I retrieved the last tangible link they had to my life, the spare emergency key. I placed it in a small safety deposit box I had rented. Every protection the law offered, I had procured. My final journal entry summarized the peace that had taken root in my life. Family is not who you are born to. Family is who respects your worth. Blood doesn't grant access to your life. Love doesn't require self-destruction. I saved myself. I would do it again. I closed the journal, turned off the light, and slept soundly, secured in the knowledge that my Bronco would be waiting for me in the morning.